How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today I bring you some great news, some excellent news. I'm glad that Trump is doing this. Finally, somebody's doing something about California and their crazy immigration rules, laws that totally conflict with the federal government's rules, having sanctuary cities like San Francisco, which created the unfortunate tragedy of Kate Steinle, also becoming a sanctuary state. Not really protecting the border. The mayor of Oakland doing the crazy thing. We'll get to that in a little bit once you watch this video that's right here next to me. But you see the headline right over my shoulder. It says Trump DOJ sues California over interference with immigration enforcement. Interference is putting it lightly. But before we get into the article, before we read that, let's watch this video right here over my left hand shoulder. I'm going to get my trusty headphones, and we're going to get straight into it.
News on President Trump's fight against California's sanctuary policies. Here with more, Fox News chief national correspondent, our own Ed Hedry tonight. Ed, what's happening?
Sean, great to see you. In fact, this is breaking just this hour. Fox News learning the Trump administration is filing a lawsuit tonight against the state of California, charging that 3 recently passed state laws are interfering with federal immigration enforcement.
Correct.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions is in California himself tonight, declaring he's determined to enforce the law and reduce crime, and is seeking an injunction to block the 3 California laws, including one that justice officials say is preventing private companies from voluntarily cooperating with ICE officials.
That's a big thing right there, because the law says that if you are a private company, not publicly funded, not by the state of California or the federal government, a private company, you can't even follow the federal law, which that right there has to be conflict. So that can't persist. You can't say that a company who follows the federal law is going to be held legally liable for doing so. It doesn't make any sense.
This confrontation, of course, comes shortly after Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf took the resist movement to a whole new level, warning potential targets that ICE agents were planning to arrest them around the Bay Area last month.
Yeah, that was crazy. And if you don't know what happened with that, I'll try to put some links in the description box below. But basically what she did was she took a screenshot of the email she got about the potential or upcoming raid, and she put it on Twitter. She was like, hey, fair warning, this is what's going to happen. And she was defiant, talking about, well, I do it again. I'm looking out for my constituents, is that and the third. But you're warning people, many of whom were wanted for sex crimes, all kind of different stuff, like 800 illegal people. You're warning them to get out of Dodge before the federal law comes in to do their job. That's totally crazy.
Yet the president struck back this week with a major court victory, a federal judge ruling the White House can withhold a $1 million federal grant to California because of concerns about that state's sanctuary city policies. That basically it's a sanctuary state now, giving refuge to about 2.5 million illegal immigrants right now. On the other side of the country, near Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, several MS-13 gang members are facing life sentences after they were convicted of restraining and then killing a Virginia man who was believed to be aligned with a rival gang member. Now, the gruesome part is the man was stabbed more than 50 times after being lured to a rock quarry. Then his body was dumped into a ditch while the MS-13 gang members tried to burn their own clothing to destroy the evidence. Bottom line is the Attorney General is now leaving the door open to filing suits not just in California, but all around the country, Sean.
Wow. I mean, the whole story about MS-13, that was crazy. But, you know, it's not something that's uncommon. It's a pretty common thing, unfortunately. Let's get into the article and see what's going on here to get a little bit more information about what's happening. The Trump Justice Department filed a lawsuit Tuesday night against California, saying 3 recently passed state laws were deliberately interfering with federal immigration policies. That's correct. It marked the latest legal and political confrontation with the nation's most populous state, which the federal government says has repeatedly stood in the way of its plans to step up enforcement actions in the workplace and against criminal aliens. Yeah, the whole thing about, workplace, like California, I think at this point wants to become its own thing. I've said that many times. They want to become the People's Republic of California, kind of like maybe North Korea. I don't really know. Maybe like China. Maybe their proximity to China and dependence upon China makes them want to become like them, but not in a good way. See, at least China has a lot of money coming in. They got a lot of, economics coming in. But California, I'm not so sure. People are leaving California in droves. I saw this article I think it was on Fox News. Matter of fact, it was a spot with Greg Gutfeld. He was talking about how much a U-Haul costs to go from California to Texas versus Texas to California, because who's going from Texas to California versus the other way around? People are leaving California in droves to the point where the truck cost to go from California to Texas is triple than it is the other way around, because they keep losing their trucks. They got to replace them. And that's why you have such a big upcharge in the cost it takes to go from one place to another. The Department of Justice and the Trump administration are going to fight these unjust, unfair, unconstitutional policies. Attorney General Jeff Sessions was expected to tell California law enforcement officers on Wednesday, which is today, we are fighting to make your job safer and to help you reduce crime in America. The state's Democratic governor, Jerry Brown, fired back. Quote, at a time of unprecedented political turmoil, Jeff Sessions has come to California to further divide and polarize America. Jeff, these political stunts may be the norm in Washington, but they don't work here. Sad. So I guess he's trying to like separate California away from the federal government. That's what I'm saying. They want to become their own thing. And how are you going to accuse Jeff Sessions of being divisive when you yourself, you as a governor, and also your state, the people that run the state, you guys are trying to have these policies that totally are against the federal government. The federal government says it's illegal to be here illegally. Then you say, nah, that's okay. The federal government says we need to do raids on places where there's going to be a lot of illegal people at. A lot of them have criminal warrants. You say, nah, we don't want to do that. Who's being divisive? Unity in the nation would be to have the same general rules across the board, not the exact same thing from state to state. Obviously, you're talking about taxes. You're talking about some of the smaller local things, but big things like coming into the country of the USA illegally, big things like being a sex offender, a murderer, things like that shouldn't be a states' right issue. But I digress. Let's keep going with the article. Federal officials are seeking an injunction to immediately block enforcement of the 3 California laws, each enacted within the last year. One of those laws offers additional worker protections against federal immigration enforcement actions. Senior Justice Department officials have said it's prevented companies from voluntarily cooperating with immigration customs enforcement officials. So basically, I think the law says that if you are, matter of fact, let's read it right here. Employers are mandated under the law to demand ICE agents present a warrant or subpoena before entering certain areas of the premises or when accessing some employee records. So they're interfering, they're obstructing, but the employers are just trying to follow the law, but they're being ordered by California to obstruct. That doesn't make any sense. Some companies have complained they felt torn between trying to comply with seemingly contradictory state and federal statutes, of course, since penalties for non-compliance can be steep from both entities. So exactly, what are you going to do? You in between the rock and the hard place. You can't win for losing. The state of California is trying to force the federal government to kowtow to them, but that's not really the way it's supposed to go. Another state law, dubbed, known by critics as a sanctuary state, bill protects immigrants without legal residency by limiting state and municipal cooperation with the feds, including what information can be shared about illegal immigrant inmates. A third law gives state officials the power to monitor and inspect immigration detention facilities either run directly by or contracted through the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The Justice Department has said it's confident that the Constitution's Supremacy Clause gives it broad authority to supersede state laws that it says interfere with its immigration enforcement obligations, which I think is okay. You know, some would say, you know, let's have small government, this, that, and the third. But I think some things the government should be required to do. That's what they should be here for. I'm not an anarchist. I think anarchy is chaos at the end of the day. We need to have some government. And I think even a small government should be able to enforce immigration laws. That's not really something that should be up for state to state debate, because each state is part of the federal government. You don't need a specific type of license to go from state to state, but you do need something to go outside of the country. You need a passport. You can't just come here illegally. That's really the bottom line. And the article continues, still, state officials in the past have cited the 10th Amendment's guarantee of states not being compelled to enforce federal laws. We've seen this B-rated movie before, so we're not totally surprised. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said in a response to the new lawsuit, I've spoken about him before. I forget what the exact context of it was, but I'm sure it was something just like this. If you remember that video where I talked about Xavier Becerra, please let me know in the comments below. The Justice Department is also reviewing Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf's decision to warn of an immigration sweep in advance, which ICE said allowed hundreds of immigrants to escape detention. Illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. Let's get that right. Oakland is a city of immigrants. We will continue to exercise our legal right to exist as a sanctuary city. We will continue to inform all residents about their constitutional rights, and we will continue to support California sanctuary status, the Democratic mayor responded. So she's like bucking. She's like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want to do regardless, and that's it. Illegal immigrants with sex, robbery convictions among those who evaded capture after Oakland's mayor warning. Crazy. An estimated 2.5 million immigrants are believed to be in California illegally. In the most recent figures, ICE has reported about 16% of its enforcement apprehensions take place in that state. The latest legal action by the Trump administration is part of an aggressive push to enforce existing immigration laws, with Sessions in previous remarks citing a porous U.S. border with Mexico and the threat of criminal activity by immigrant gangs. I don't like the word immigrant in this case, because when you're talking about immigrants, that's different than illegal immigrants. I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm anti-illegal immigrant. So let's get the wording right. Illegal alien, undocumented alien, illegal alien, somebody that's not here legally, a lawbreaker. That's what that is. Immigrants don't necessarily break the law just by being immigrants. If you're here legally, you are not who I'm talking about. But I digress. Let's get back to the article and wrap it on up. Federal officials repeatedly have cited the case of Kate Stanley, shot to death by an illegal alien and 7-time felon in San Francisco. There's the right term right there, illegal alien, one of 35 communities in the state declaring itself a sanctuary city. The Justice Department in January threatened California and other states with subpoenas and a loss of grant money for repeatedly failing to respond to requests for immigration compliance under a federal law known as Section 1373. Federal officials will not say whether other states were at a risk of similar lawsuits over their alleged noncompliance with immigration laws. A coordinated ICE enforcement action last month on businesses in an LA area netted 212 people arrested for violating federal immigration laws, 88% of whom were convicted criminals, officials said. Yeah, this whole thing with California is a mess. And it's a lot of people in California. Shout out to everybody in California who doesn't really want to have anything to do with this kind of craziness. At the end of the day, as I close, I just want to say that hopefully this lawsuit doesn't get obstructed by these crazy judges who have obstructed stuff like the travel ban, aka the Muslim ban. Hopefully this goes right, because the main thing I'm seeing here is how California is superseding federal law. The federal law is not going to change. You can't say that you can just buck the federal law and do whatever you want to do, because at that point, federal law is meaningless. You don't want to have the federal government anymore. You want to be your own place. I think Styx Hexenhammer said it right, and shout out to him, good content creator over here on YouTube, but he said it right. Let's let California secede from the union, and then what we do as the U.S., we invade them and then make them be a territory. So we get all the benefits of having California as a state, but none of the hangups, none of the extra stuff we got to deal with when you're talking about California. They can't really interfere with us. They can do whatever they want to do, but we pretty much control and dominate them from the outside without having them be a liability to the U.S. So that's pretty much how I look at the whole situation. What do you think? Do you think that California is right to have these laws that go against the federal government? Are you an ANCAP? Are you an anarchist? Or are you just somebody that believes in small government? What do you think the government should do? What is a government's role in society? Should they say that you can't come into the country illegally? And if you think that they should not be able to say that, then why do you have a lock on your door? Who's going to put a lock on the door of the country? What happens if you have no border, no ICE agents, nothing? You can just come across the border willy-nilly. Do you think that we would survive as a country we have a finite amount of resources, and the truth is we're not even really producing everything we need here as a nation for all of our 325 million people as it stands right now. So when you bring in truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of people day after day after day, how are you going to be able to support all of that? You're going to wind up like India or China, over 1 billion people, and then the majority of the population, you're talking about living in second world conditions, maybe third world conditions. In the big cities, they'll be living well, but outside of that, they'll be living terribly. And it's already starting to kind of happen now with the whole opioid crisis and whatnot. So I don't see how anybody would be against the lawsuit here. As I close, I want to say this. I'm going to close real this time. How about Jeff Sessions? Are you pleased with what he's doing here? Do you think he could do more? What more could Jeff Sessions do if you think he's not doing enough? Whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.